Hello and welcome to Soul Talk, where we explore the soul in all things. I'm Nancy, and today I'm joined by Susan, Hazel, and Judy to talk about the continuity of the soul, in which consciousness is inextinguishable and death is an illusion. Well, it's my understanding that most of us don't come in with a soul memory, and that we have to be triggered in order for the memory to come back. And that's what happened to me when I was a child. Something was triggered, a situation at home, and then I started having a recurring nightmare of drowning in a steel box. And it happened again and again, and I never told anybody. And but the strange thing is that I would wake up and I would be surprised that I was alive, and I was in my dry bed at home, and then I dream it again the next night. And, it took me 40 years to figure it out, but I was able to discover, um, what happened. So I hope none of you had to wait 40 years.
That's a
I
long time.
actually had a very precipitous memory. I was a senior in college picking up a freshman music appreciation class that they required you take to graduate. And the professor was playing some 16th century music. And I flipped out. I'm sitting there at my desk, but I'm also in a convent. And at the time, I knew it was real. And I wrote in my notes, I've lived before and I will again. I had no idea about reincarnation. I thought that was something that Hindu people thought you came back as an animal. And that's all I knew about reincarnation. But I was just, you know how you know who you are? That's how sure I was that I was remembering a previous lifetime. But it
Wow.
was, yeah, it was just precipitated by the right music.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hazel,
That's profound.
I had the same experience. There's a particular piece of music now. Um, it's variations on a theme of Thomas Tallis. I think it's a Vaughan Williams. Anyway, the first time I heard it, I was sort of catapulted back into this. I was trudging along a dirt road. I was young. Would have been about 12 or 13. And I was wearing a rough Hessian tunic and rope, around the waist, barefoot. I'm trudging along, but knowing that I'm going to hear the rabbi speak. And I realized it was a long time ago. And I get teary every time I remember this experience. It was so heart melting to hear him speak. And I realized it was Jesus that we were gathering. We were just poor people, obviously. I don't remember much more because the shock of it sort of brought me out of it again. But it was music, that particular piece of music that triggered it. And it does to this day. Every time I hear it, I sort of go back there into that sort of emotional, mental, and so on climate. It's a kind of, even when I can't remember the details, I remember what it was like being there as a grubby kid, you know, you know, just wanting to hear this wonderful rabbi speak.
Well,
And there's another part where I woke up out of a dream once calling out Rabboni, Rabboni, or something like that. And I thought, what on earth is that? I had to look it up. And it meant, I think it meant something like Blessed Master or whatever, I'm not sure. So, you know, things can suddenly trigger it. It's not like we carry it all with us. But I do think that um, memories and even capacities are drawn forth at peak times too. Don't you think times of great need, um, suddenly you'll know something or have a capacity that you never knew you had, that suddenly draws it forth, that you've obviously developed somewhere in past life, maybe. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that it was music for both of you, because music is vibration, and the you were, you know, your body, your inner being felt the vibration of the music, and it stimulated your memory so dramatically. That's not surprising at all.
The fact that it's music for both of you is fascinating. I didn't have an experience at all of being reincarnated. What did happen with me was a deep desperation after years of having been really a believer in nothing beyond the physical life. And at university, I became desperate for something more than this arid existence, and went into the university bookstore in this desperation and found the one book in the whole place that had anything to do with life beyond the veil, and devoured this book and decided that it was the truth, that reincarnation was absolutely real, and that I had lived before. And that began a long search, which took me into places where I was finally writing a book about the subject called Death, Our Last Delusion. And that book really educated me in the process of writing it about the nature of life beyond death and reincarnation. Yeah. So
W- Did you do
Wonderful.
research, or was it your own experience that did you have your own experiences that you used, or did you interview other people?
I interviewed other people, but I did 10 years of research, scientific research, really, on subjects like um, the evidence for death being not a brain, or for survival of death being not a brain or heart consciousness thing, but being able to be shown to be the mind beyond the brain at times when the person concerned was absolutely dead on the operating table, for example.
You know, there's been
What?
some wonderful research, some scientific research into this that gets, there was a wonderful documentary. It was produced about 20 years ago at a hospital in the United States. I can't remember which one it was. I could look it up. And they looked into these near-death experiences and documented them. But the one that stood out for me was a woman who had been blind since birth. She had never been able to see physically. And she had a near-death experience during the um, operating room during surgery. And she died on the table. And when they brought her back, and when they came back, she said she could see, and she was able to describe everything that was in the operating theatre and an experience that she'd had beyond the operating theatre. But when she came back, she was blind again physically. But she had been able to see. That was one of many documented cases that they did of, people dying. Let's put it in inverted commas now, dying on the operating table. And it was good disciplined research and documentation. So what I find interesting is why people still believe that death is final. It's
Well,
interesting with all
it,
of the, evidence.
but no, they're not listening because it's not important to them. My father was very scientifically minded, and he brought us up as atheists, particularly as an atheist. And he assured us that when we died, that was it. You're dead. You don't have to worry about a thing anymore because you're not here. You're gone. But you see, then I had this dream, so I couldn't tell my father. I couldn't tell anybody. But you see, that's how he was actually very spiritual, but in his own way. See, people, we have to figure out the world for ourselves. Susan, you finally found a clue, a book on reincarnation, and it gave you a reason, to believe, and you finally found something you could believe in. It was the right time, you had the need, but unless we have the need, you know, it's not important.
Mm.
Mhm. There's other research was done. I don't know if you've heard of Peter Ramster. He helped people remember past lives, and they documented this. But he went further. He produced a number of television programs about it, which were broadcast on our national broadcaster here in Australia. This is going back a long, long time. One of his subjects was the mother of a little boy that went to school with my little girl. So I
Oh.
remember it quite vividly. And he would, they would remember these past lives, and then he would take them to where they were in the world in that life. And it was amazing how they remembered everything that there when they had never been there, never knew anything about it in the current life. This particular woman apparently had been a doctor in Scotland, and he took her back there, a man and a doctor, and she remembered, and they filmed it all, and that's why they made these series of programs. And Peter used to say, we knew him, um, and he used to say the amount of documented evidence was voluminous, and he had to sort of, cut it down. He said it was amazing, but it's fascinating and joyful. They were rediscovering where they'd been in a previous life, and there was a kind of magical realization that they're more than the lives, that they're this eternal something. And of course, this is introducing us to the nature of the soul. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I had another interesting experience, interesting to me anyway. Raymond Moody, who started doing a lot of, near-death experience research, was describing the process that someone had gone through. And I was reading it, and it was like I had been through that process in deep meditation. And it was like, so wow, I'm not sure what that meant. And this was like 40, 50 years ago. But it was, I had experienced those things described there in a very deep meditation, which unfortunately I can't just go back there and re-experience the meditation. But
Mm.
Was it
so
a kind of a death experience? What was it?
no, I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, wow, this sounds familiar. And then I realized I've done this in meditation.
What
But
did you do?
well, I thought about it a lot. And then my conclusion was that wherever we go in death, is very similar to where we go in deep meditation. And now, as I
Oh.
understand more about subtle worlds, which I knew nothing about at the time, I realize that it probably was a similar place.
Well, what was it like? What was it like?
You're just in deep, deep meditation, and it's beautiful. It's light. It's great. I understood light and life were one. There was no question in my mind. I can't remember whether it's Blavatsky or Alice Bailey who talks about the mystery of electricity. Well, it's because light, life, light, electricity, and life are all aspects of one thing. And I kind of relate them to the three fires in Treatise on Cosmic Fire. But yeah, it was just a beautiful experience.
Mhm.
Then I just trudge along.
Well,
As
Hazel,
many kids as I have, you don't have a lot of time to just dwell.
well, Hazel, I had a sort of life-changing experience in meditation back, I think the late 1980s, early 1990s. I can't remember when. It was the most powerful experience and absolutely transported. Anyway, it was only not that many years ago. I was reading a, a public something that had been sent to me, which was actually transmissions from spiritual elders on the other side. And I didn't know at the time, and I sort of read through, and I thought, oh, this really makes sense. This really makes sense. I got to the last paragraph, and it virtually described the experience I'd had decades ago. I was so blown away. I'm sitting there saying out loud, how could they know? How could they know? It was quite, yeah, and you realize, that we're living in a dimension as well that we're not aware of always when we're lost in the worldly daily living thing, but we're actually living in a dimension where, as you say, everything's known and shared.
Yes.
It's not isolated just to you, it's shared, and what you experienced was something that is real and others experience too, in that dimension of the soul. And it's a beautiful, so much more beautiful. You can't use words to describe that dimension, really, because they're worldly words, aren't they?
That's
And
a major problem, yes.
yeah,
Have the
yeah,
vocabulary for it.
yeah. But I have to say, I was stunned. I just sat there for ages. I reread it and how could they have known?
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
I haven't experienced anything like that. I think that this whole thing with memory, past life memory, and things, um, it comes to us for a reason. I don't remember a past life. I remember a past death. I think because I think in this life I needed to get over my fear of of a traumatic death, and so that was my recall. And because I went to a past life regression once with a group, um, and we were given a breathing exercise and counting backwards. And there's about like 25 people, maybe 30. Half of them went back to Atlantis. And I went as far back as the Middle Ages. But the thing is, I could have been imagining the whole thing. It's when you bring an emotional, um, when a memory has emotion attached to it, uh, then then I think it's real. And if there's no emotion attached to it, maybe it's just imagination, because we can imagine anything. But I relived this death experience several times in dreams. And obviously, it was because I had to remember it in order to get over it and realize that I'm here. I didn't die. And there's no need to be afraid of death. And, you know, that's what one of the things that it's important to me to share to other people is sometimes you will have experiences in life that may not, that they're not, that are, not pleasant. They're, they could be quite awful, really. But when you think, well, why did I have this? Why did my soul give me this experience? Because there's always a reason. And maybe the reason is so you'll remember something, an emotion will be triggered so that you'll look deeper to try to understand, why am I here? You know, that's what that's the good that I've got out of it.
I think
That
if you
reminds
go,
me that I had a similar experience as a result of doing a course and being regressed into a past life with a number of other people and landing in the concentration camp, which I'd dreaded for years. I'd felt it, if you like, at my back all that time, and then suddenly there I was in the concentration camp. And I think it was, once again, in order to get over the horror of it, to discover that, in fact, it wasn't the end of life, and it wasn't the end of experience for any of us, though it was a terrible experience. And I think a number of people around me have had that same experience of finding themselves in the concentration camp
Mm.
and needing to find their way out of it, needing to
I think you can also figure out present fears. I had an enormous fear of snakes, a pathological fear of snakes. There could be a dead snake on the highway and I'm walking. I got to go the other side of the road, even though that snake's dead, smashed, whatever. And we were getting ready to move to Arizona. And we were moving into a brand new neighborhood. So there were going to be a lot of snakes, rattlesnakes around. And I was a little nervous about this. And I had a dear, dear friend who was brilliant at being able to help you regress into something, into a meditation deeper or whatever. So we decided we were going to see if I could find out why I had this pathological fear. And she got me into a meditative state, and we went back further and further and further. And I was a very, very small child in a jungle when this anaconda or something like that ate me.
Oh my
And
God.
the interesting part of that memory was I have had sweaty palms one time in my life, and it was with that memory. My palms were just all of a sudden sopping wet, and my heart was racing. I'm sitting there in my living room with my heart just boom. And it was like, I have to believe that because of the physical response, that it was real.
yes.
Well, how do you feel about snakes now?
I don't like them. When I almost stepped on a rattlesnake one evening right off my patio, I got my fear turned to anger, and I gave up my commitment to nonviolence, and I screamed for my husband to come kill it.
Dear.
And he had just been waiting. He had a gun, apparently, and apparently there was a thing they sold in that area called snake shot. And he just brought out the gun with the snake shot in
Oh
it.
gosh.
Shot this big
Aw.
rattlesnake that I had almost stepped on.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
But it was, it just turned to anger, and the pathological fear is gone. I don't like them. I don't want to see one. I don't want to be near them, but I'm not terrified anymore.
Mm.
At all.
You
Uh-huh.
know, I think these experiences help us move in consciousness, don't they? They expand our sense of
Mm.
things, and they expand our sense of self. And I think they help us move along the spiritual path back into realizing who we really are, and that we're not the masks that Nancy talks about,
Mm.
masks. They're not the masks we wear in any particular lifetime. And so it's part of disidentifying with those masks and re-identifying with our soul being, perhaps. It's interesting, isn't it? Nancy, I had a series of dreams when I was a teenager. It was every night for about 5 or 6 nights. I had these awful dreams of dying in different ways. One was drowning one night, the next it was fire, the next I can't remember, hanging, the next was, and
Mm.
I'd wake up and I think, they were so real, and detailed. It was like I just wonder, I'm still wondering what that was all about. And they didn't ever come back again. But it was about a week of them, and every night a different experience. It was like, you have to wonder, don't you? Was it letting me know, sure, I've died many times in many horrible ways, and I'm still this being.
Mhm.
Maybe it was something to do with that. I don't know.
Well, I
You,
think it was your subconscious putting you through these steps
yeah,
of experiencing death, um, and so that you wouldn't be afraid of it, that you would just take it into your consciousness, because that was your subconscious, but you remembered it, so it became conscious, so that
yeah.
you would take it in stride. But you know what I wish? You know, when there was like 9/11, it was a shock. And I'm in New York, and it was such a shock to all of us. And you think of all those people, thousands of people and body bags. There were no body bags. I'm sorry, because there were no bodies. That was another shock. Well, the thing is, so a friend of mine, we were talking, and she said, she reminded me, but she had a vision of them all walking together up the stairway to heaven. And I'm so glad, I'm so grateful that she presented me with that image for my mind, because we were all very upset. And I knew mentally, okay, there's no death, but still these people died. And you just want to tell people who've lost a loved one, that they're okay. They're probably much happier now, and they're with their family and their loved ones, and they're going on. And you just want to tell people that. You want people to know that. And I think that's one reason why, you know, we we like sharing our stories, because we want everybody to be okay, and to know that we're eternal, you
Mhm.
know. But we have to accept that we're these you know, souls, and consciousness is, I love that from that meme, inextinguishable. You can't extinguish it. It's the flame, the divine flame spark that never dies, and we've got it.
we are
One of
it.
the things
We
that
are it. Yes, I am a soul.
one of the things that I've always been taught, told from within is the bonds of love cannot be broken. Because the thing
Mm,
that bothered me about death was not the dying or that, it was loved ones. Where are they? And just those words came in into my consciousness. And they were repeated and repeated and repeated enough that when I have a friend who is dealing with something like that, I can say those words with confidence. Now, whether they accept it is another thing, but I know the bonds of love cannot be broken. And we will, yeah.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. My research has shown that we go into a place where we join into a family that we've known forever, and people that we reincarnate with sometimes and not others, but who remain in the heavenly realms when we're not reincarnating with them. And it's the most wonderful experience to be reunited with them.
Oh, I bet it is. A soul family.
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Someone has
Mm.
recently written a book about that. I can't remember her name, but she's been writing recently, and one of the things she describes is soul families and connections.
Yes.
Karen somebody, and I can't remember her last name.
So, you have to start wondering then, what's the purpose of being in the world, really? If we're so,
Incarnating? Do you
yeah,
mean incarnating?
yeah, incarnating. So I wonder, you know, there's a reason for everything. There's a purpose in this, and obviously, we're experiencing being in the world, and through what happens in the world, we're remembering who we are in another sense. So I just wonder, perhaps the purpose of actually incarnating is to fully realize that while in incarnation, and maybe then bring that heavenly realm, allow that heavenly realm to express in the world, right through into the world. Maybe. I mean, everything's
I think
purposeful, isn't it?
it's also, I think, there's karma. We have some debts we need to repay
Okay.
and receive payment for. Or, we're growing and we want to develop something. But it's like the story of the prince and the pauper. You can't really know what it's like to be rich if you're poor, and you can't understand what it's like to be poor if you're rich. And so I think there are things we can only learn through not knowing who we really are. And then you reach a point where you know who you really are. Now, what's this lesson about? But
Yeah.
it enables you to develop a much deeper compassion, because as you go back to the soul level,
Yes.
yes, you experience that. You know what that is, and you can empathize with that person who's having whatever going on.
And it takes lifetimes to
Yeah,
get to that
yeah.
point of
Maybe we,
developing.
yeah. Maybe we learn to love more and be able to see more and to see everything in its place. It's expanding our awareness, isn't it? Until, you know, we love everything. You hold everything in the heart, if you like. Yeah. It's
Yes.
heart expanding and mind expanding and self expanding.
Well, what do you
Also
think?
help us to
Sorry, what do
become.
you think about? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, it's helping us to become more creative, because when we have limitations, we have to figure out how to get around them, so we become more creative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think about the veil thinning? We've all heard about this, about how there's the visible world and the invisible world, and how the veils are now becoming thinner, and more people more and more people all the time are connecting to the inner world and the concept of the higher self. But the other world is not so far away as it used to be. It keeps coming closer. Don't you think? Do you have an
Yes.
experience of the veil thinning?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm.
Very much. Yes.
One of the, go ahead.
Now go on,
One,
Hazel.
one of the things I had to learn was to trust inside. Not write it off as, oh, that's just imagination. To allow for the fact that maybe there's something real here that I'm to learn from. And in learning to do that, which was not easy for me, but as I become more and more able to accept these things as real experiences, the veil seems thinner.
Yeah, so what is the nature of that veil? You know, I think it's just largely the thought of separation. And once we dispel that thought, then we're open to the flow through between the realms, aren't we? So
Mm.
we've probably
Mhm.
created that veil through our lack of realization, maybe.
Well,
And
because
maybe
we were
it was
very physical,
protective. And maybe it was
very
a
when you're a
yeah,
protection. Well, we
maybe it
couldn't
was.
handle it.
Mm,
We couldn't handle it. I mean, because the physical is about survival, and
mm,
somehow making it in this world, which can be very harsh and hard. Uh, and but it's the higher realms, when you start when this isn't enough, when the material world isn't enough, and we seek for something more, something higher, something deeper, something more meaningful. Then we bring that down. But don't you feel that we're connecting to the higher worlds more now, more and more people, as we learn more about science uh and spirituality, and more people are um, becoming aware of their spiritual nature. It's a collective thing that's happening, a
mm,
Yes,
collective awakening.
yes.
absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank
And I
goodness.
have to say, crises tend to push us along, don't they? I mean, we've
Yeah.
spoken about death experiences and so on, but there are crises in the world that, giving opportunities, if we could see it that way, for people to realize they're more than, the suffering vehicles. Yeah, absolutely. Gosh. What an amazing time we're living through.
Yeah, it is. It's
No
wild.
question.
It's
Yeah,
no
but
question.
also it's a vibration, isn't it? Frequency, because as we refine our feelings, our thoughts, and so on, we move into finer kind of frequencies of vibratory being. You've mentioned vibration, Nancy, and
Hmm.
maybe we need to do that step by step because, at the most pure vibration, let's say of a Christ or, you know, great
Hmm.
being, um, to be in their presence is almost mind blowing because of the fine vibratory presence. It's And so maybe we do have to just grow step by step into that.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
seems
Well,
that.
I know that we want to raise our vibrations, and so that because beauty is a high vibration, truth is a high vibration, um, goodness. We want to be good, and we want the world to be good. And
Yeah.
so as we raise our vibrations, um, you know, uh, then, well, it's a group effort. It's a group thing.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm glad we're doing it together.
Yes.
Yes,
We're
it's
very
wonderful.
lucky.
It's wonderful.
We're very lucky.
Yeah,
And I
good to
love the
talk.
science that allows us to do this.
Together.
And it helps You know, you really can't separate science from spirituality sometimes.
Mm.
Can't.
I know,
And you
it's
know,
all connected,
it's all
Yeah.
connected.
everything.
And
Mm-hmm.
soul consciousness is group consciousness, isn't it? It's shared consciousness because we expand out of little isolated selves and we're aware of that larger
I
self.
know. I
Yeah.
don't need to be, I have to know my soul. But when I know my soul, then I know your soul and your soul, because we see each other in a different light. And
Yeah.
then we can contemplate the one soul, that we're the one life. We can begin to contemplate that and get out of our own head, our own separate body. Yeah, so it's very exciting. Just to contemplate it.
It
Well,
is.
thank you for watching. And feel free to share in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you.